shall be. How he ransomed me and has kept me by his grace. In his glory I shall see the King, and forever endless praises sing. 'Twas on Calvary Jesus died for me. I shall see the King someday.
Shall we pray? Gracious Lord, it's another opportunity to come to you to learn. We commit our program this afternoon into your hands. We ask that, Lord, you come and sit at the helm of affairs. And at the end, Lord, please teach us the essential lessons that we need for this life. In Jesus' name, amen. So thank you so much for coming this afternoon. As we announced, we are going to do a review of the lessons that we studied this week. The topic for this week has been rich and holy. How we can build riches for generations upon generations, for God and family. For me, that is where my excitement is, not just for ourselves and our family, but for God as well. As God blesses us by applying the principles we have in the Bible, how we can also use that to support his work. Amen. We had seven lessons from Sunday all the way to this morning. So we have selected about 3 or 4 of the topics that we are going to do a review. And also, because we had just an hour during the week, we couldn't have members ask questions and also make contributions. Because sometimes our experiences or your experience will also help someone to come out of a certain situation. So that is the intention and the goal for this afternoon. First, to do a review of the lesson. If there were areas that because of time our presenters couldn't touch on, they will do that. Then also, if there are questions and contributions, we will try and pick them. We will try and make it more of a dialogue instead of they doing the presentation again, but of course focusing on the text that we're given and also sharing life experiences with us. So as I said, it's supposed to be interactive, so we will expect that you ask questions and bring along your contributions. All right. So we will have 3 of our elders join me. I'll start with Elder Ayi. Elder Ayi did the presentation for today. Elder led us to look at whether it is possible to be rich and still remain holy. So Elder will come up and join me here. Then Nati, I want to be sure of your topic, because remember we, along the way, we swapped some of the topics. Right, yes, so Elder Nati also led us to discuss sustaining the wealth. Sustaining the wealth. So Elder, please join me. Then Elder Seth Enin helped us. For his topic, I remember it very well, because how do we create the wealth, the vehicles to wealth creation. So Elder helped us to know how we can create the wealth. So I think that the arrangement is very good. How to create the wealth, how to sustain it, and how to remain holy as we create the wealth. So Elder, please join me. And let me also say that during the week on Tuesday, we had a friend elder from Community 18 come around to discuss retirement. And we realized that the target audience was not present that evening. So we have made an arrangement for him to come back. But this time we are going to also have some of our retirees join him. They will share their experiences, how they were able to plan until they got to retirement. Things that we are supposed to do, and maybe some pitfalls that we must avoid using their life experiences. Then our elder from Community 18 will help us how we can save whilst we are in active service, then benefit from the SNIT scheme when we go on retirement. The special focus will be for those who are self-employed, because for those who are in formal employment, whether you like it or not, the employer will deduct and go and pay. So at minimum, if you don't even have anything, you have the SNIT payment, and now we have the tier 2, the lump sum payment. But the focus will be for those who are self-employed. And the arrangement is that we start announcing next week. Those who are self-employed who are interested in registering with SNIT, you will give your name to the secretariat. When he comes next 2 weeks, he has promised that he will come with some of the SNIT officials to help us with the registration, instead of us going there to go and do the registration. So that is just a quick announcement for us. All right. So elders, you are welcome. First, let me just start and ask your general impression and overview of the lessons that you handled. Just a quick overview of what you presented during the week before we go into the specific items that we have in there. Right? Any elder can start. All right, that's it.
Thank you very much. So, my topic was about vehicles to wealth creation. I must confess that I deviated a little bit because it was very skewed towards what financial instruments.
When we do our jobs. And so, sometimes we may have something doing, but we are not getting the required returns. It is all because along the way we might have been unfaithful or we lack that integrity. And that is why we are not getting the returns that we are expecting from our businesses. And I think that few of us, sometimes we talk about it a lot. How we are supposed to exhibit integrity in all aspects of our businesses. Because if we want to get out of it, for me, that was one instructive lesson that I picked from the presentation that I did, that we must exhibit integrity throughout our dealings. Sometimes it is difficult because nowadays, if you want to play by the books, you don't get the big bucks, you don't get the big money. But in the end, you'll be rewarded handsomely. And so for me, that is one other point that I want to add on to what the elders have said. Let me come back to what I said. You did, I don't know whether we could, they can show that you gave us a model, a certain model, where I think about 3 of them, where you get your income, everything goes back into expenses, you are not able to save, and that does not help us create the necessary wealth that we are looking at. But there was one model that, the message was that we should try and emulate. Can you expand that a bit? And also touching on, other mentioned that now where do you even invest? I know it's a difficult question to ask, but where do you invest? And maybe we can now ask Elder Asante Mensah to come in.
Right. So, if you can see the screen, this was from a book I read by a gentleman called Robert Kiyosaki. And he had this model to show the difference between those who are rich those who are middle class, and those who are poor. You know you are rich when you are on the stage and your daughter is coming to you. But if you look at the model on the screen, and please permit me to maybe stand, it talks about the poor people. Now, poor people, what do? We get a job. So maybe you're a salaried worker, or what kind of work, whatever kind of work you do. When you get a job, you are given a salary. At the end of the month, you spend all the money in paying rent, paying food, paying transportation, buying clothes, and paying some taxes. At the end of the day, you don't have any assets, you don't have any liability, so you don't have anything. And this is what we call hand to mouth. As soon as you get your money, at the end of the month, it is gone. A lot of us are in this bracket. If we don't find a way to move away from this bracket, it will be very difficult for us to create wealth. A lot of us will find ourselves here. At the end of the month, you are paid an amount of money, and that is all. Then we go through this cycle. There's nobody who is rich who is in this cycle. And then there's the middle class. And here I use the example of maybe those of us who used to work in the bank. With the middle class too, they have a job. They are paid a salary at the end of the month or whatever period. And then they spend, or because by virtue of what they do, they are able to get some loans. So he has taken a loan to buy a car. He has taken a loan to buy a house. He has taken a loan to buy everything that he can imagine. So as soon as he is paid at the end of the month, the money goes to pay for all the liabilities that he has created and also pay for all the expenses that he has. At the end of the day, he's also not doing what? He's not investing in any asset that is generating money for him. The accountant will tell you that when you have a car, it's an asset. But really, some assets are more of a liability than an asset truly, because when you have a car, the car has to bring fuel. The car has to go for maintenance. The car has to do that. So if you have a car for just having a car's sake, then you end up creating a liability, because the money that you get at the end of the month, you only use it to pay for the expenses related to that liability. And so that's the middle class. And I think bankers are a very good example. Those who work in the corporate environment are also very good examples. You get your salary because you've taken loans for your car, your house, and all that. All the money goes back into paying those liabilities, and you don't create assets. But this is what he mentioned about the rich. So the rich people have devised the ability to use their income to rather buy assets that generate income. So let me give you an example. Maybe you worked in a company and you're able to save from your income, and now you have maybe a small 1-acre farm, or you've bought yourself a taxi, or you've bought yourself maybe a small container in which somebody is sewing for you. In that case, at the end of the month or at the end of the period, you know some income is going to come from that side. So assume you're doing work and pay, and you bought a car for somebody. At the end of the month, the person will bring you some income. It comes to add to your regular income that you have. If you're a farmer, at the end of the planting season, maybe 3 months, 6 months, you know you're going to get some income that is coming. If you are somebody who has a small shop that somebody is managing for you, at least you know at the end of the month, some income is going to come from there. So the rich people have devised this ability to use their income to get assets that generate income for them. And that is where we all should aspire to be. The assets can be various kinds. In the presentation, they talked about, please go down a bit. They talked about the different kinds of assets. And that was what Wednesday's lesson was really about. I didn't want to spend too much time there. They talked about real estate. I think Eldanate mentioned it now. Today, people can invest in real estate. And real estate doesn't mean you are the house in which you live. It could be a house that you have purchased that you're not living in, somebody is living in and paying you rent at the end of the period. Now, a lot of these companies, they do these apartments and they break them into pieces so that you can go and buy a stake. And then they rent it out. And the income that comes, they share it amongst the apartment owners. So real estate is a very good investment vehicle, especially during recessionary times or during high inflation times. Real estate is a very good investment to be in. They also talked about stocks. Today, I'll not talk too much about it because when you want to invest in stocks, you need to understand what company it is before you invest in. I'm looking at the audience and I'm very worried about the details of it, but there are various forms of investments that you can put in. Please, let's go to the previous slide before this one. It talks about income. Let me spend a little bit of time there, and then maybe I'll hand over to Edabini Ebwa or to Edasante Mensah to tell us about how we can create wealth through agriculture. It's one of the areas that I think as young people, there are not too many of us here, but I see Edalate, I see Francis, Kwame, Kofi, and a few other young people. Agriculture is really a very good place to invest now. And for our forerunners who have gone on before us, who know a lot more about it, I think we should tap into their expertise to see how we can do it. A lot of young people are leaving the banks and the corporate institutions to go into agriculture. Some are going into very low into the value chain. Others are playing in the middle somewhere. But whatever it is, agriculture is one area that personally I recommend for people to look at when they want to go into investments. The other investments are also good if you understand it. Real estate is good. Even stocks, bonds, they can be good if you understand exactly what you're doing. Derivatives, currencies, etc. But let me spend some few minutes, if you permit me, to go through this slide. I don't know if you can all see the screen. Maybe let me stand here. So this is like a circle divided into 4 pieces, 4 parts. The first half of the pie to my left, to your right, talks about active income. And on Wednesday, I mentioned that active income is the kind of activity or the kind of job that you do that you as a person, you are involved in, day out. So you are part of that job. And it can be 2 sources. One, either you are employed by somebody, maybe you work in a company and you are employed by the company to work for them, or it is your own business that you wake up to and go. Francis, permit me to use you. So Francis is a tailor. He's a fashion designer. He has his own shop. When he wakes up in the morning, he goes to his shop to go and sew. What Francis is doing now is generating active income because he goes to work every day to produce. I don't know Kwame. Maybe Kwame is also a teacher, whatever. He wakes up in the morning. He goes to school to teach the children. And from there, he's paid an income. Maybe Grandma Susie has a tabletop shop. She wakes up in the morning. She goes there. And that's what she generates money from. I work in a certain company. I wake up in the morning, even though I don't want to. I have to go to work. And that's where I generate my income from. So all the persons that I mentioned, we are all generating active income because every day we go to work to go and do it. So you can either be employed or you can be self-employed. The other half, to my right and to your left, is what we call passive income. And that's where the actual richness is. So passive income is when you are generating income, but you are not the one doing the everyday work. So as I mentioned, assume you have a taxi that is working for you. That taxi driver will get up and go and work. And at the end of the period, if he's a faithful person, he will bring you your money. That is passive income. You are sitting somewhere and somebody is working for you. Passive income can also be through investments. So maybe you've bought some investment somewhere a long time ago, and every period you get your returns. So passive income can come in 2 forms. You are the owner of a business where people are in a business working for you, or you are an investor who has invested in all the things that we talked about earlier. Now, how do we achieve passive income? You can only achieve passive income when you use your active income to get assets which will start generating money for you. And I use the example of one day I was listening to a TV program, and I usually don't listen to these Ghanaian entrepreneurs because, like somebody mentioned, a lot of them don't have integrity. And you get closer to them and then you understand exactly how that is so true. But I was just listening to Citizen Coffee, and I'm not assuming that he doesn't have integrity, but he was saying something that struck me a lot. He said, you know you are rich when you are sleeping, you are still making money. And that is a powerful statement from somebody who is very rich. You know you are rich when you are sleeping, you are still making money. Me can you Papa say, what's that? Who is Kenya? And now you are the four. And I'm what? Then say what the crana? Now we is ka. How can you get to that level? It is only when you have started generating what? Passive income. What da also diano? Na usikebi da baby a woman. And there are various vehicles to achieving the passive income. That was really the gist of Wednesday. That what investments can we put our monies in, the active money into the passive, to start generating money for us. And there are various ones. At the moment, as I stand here, I have done a little bit of the financial instruments, the bonds, the stocks, currencies, commodities, real estate. Those ones are good if you understand them. Some of them really require a lot of capital to put in before the returns can be good enough for you to see. I mean, if you want to do real estate, you need to be able to have, now an apartment in Accra will sell for not less than 250,000 US dollars. That is like 5 million cedis. If you don't have the 5 million to start real estate, then maybe you can look at other passive income that you can work in. And I will recommend that for us, young people, and I don't know where they are, but for a lot of young people, when you start doing work and you are generating your active income, start looking at things like farming. Because, as I mentioned, even the government that we trusted will be there for us, without fail. Now, government is saying they are giving haircut. Government is saying they are giving haircut. So, it makes sense to put your incomes into things that you can have some modicum of control. A grade could be a good one, and Elder will speak to it, but it could be a good one. The last thing that I'll talk about before I sit down is that we need to also find a way to maximize the surpluses that we get from our active income to be able to generate the passive income. And one of the ways would be to get 2 or more active incomes. And I remember on Wednesday, I used the example of when I went to visit my friend in London. And, I had come from, I was staying in Denmark then when I went. I come from Denmark, I was sleeping like a cat. This guy will get up at 4 a.m., go to whatever time. He will get up in the morning, maybe around 7, go and do security work, come back around 4, come and have a quick bath and a quick meal. 6 o'clock, he is gone. He comes back at 4 a.m., comes to do whatever he needs to do, then he is gone. And I asked him, Sammy, what time do you get to rest? And he was telling me, hey, here we don't rest though. And I saw it because it was winter when I went. And, Accra boy, I've never stayed in the cold before. And even putting on the heater in the room was such a terrible thing. And I was feeling so cold. So eventually I had to give him money that, I beg you, there was a gas prototype of a heater that we use. I told him, get 50 pounds, please go and buy gas, so at least I can heat myself up a bit. But the point is this: we need to find additional active income if we can, if you can, to be able to provide you with the base that you need to go into the passive. Or you need to minimize your cost. And I'll speak to our young ladies. I don't see so many of them here. I see Mrs. Nate, I see Belinda, I see our sister there. We need to minimize our cost. Things are so expensive today If you're a husband and you are giving chop money, I think you would always be fighting at home. But we need to survive. And so let us learn how we can replace some of the costs that we incur with things that we can do ourselves. To give you an example, I don't know how practicable it will be for you to have a small pot in your backyard, in your porch, or wherever you can find yourself, plant a tomato seed or plant a tomato plant in it, and let that tomato plant give you, how much are you buying tomatoes now? But I'm assuming there will be somewhere around 300 cedis for a bucket. Yeah? If you can get that, it will take 300 cedis off your cost. And forgive me for being verbose. When I used to live at trade fair, there was a time Eva threw out some wastewater outside. And before we knew it, a tomato plant had sprouted. And we harvested tomatoes like 3 buckets. We just go and you see the tomatoes and you pluck them. You just go and you see the tomatoes and you pluck them. And so we can do some of those small things, seemingly small things, but it would reduce the cost for us so that the excess cost that we've now saved can go into the passive income. So the models are there. But as my presentation also mentioned, you have to start. You have to decide, have the mindset that this is where I want to be and start on that journey. I don't want to speak too much, but I'll just end here and then we'll take on from there.
All right. Thank you, Elder Enim. Let me ask this question before I invite Elder Santimensa. Maybe to Elder Ayi, though it is not, he didn't treat this topic, but I believe he's gone through and he has the experience. What the Elder spoke about, are they not too big for us to start? Because Elder was talking about real estate, and you admitted that, you need huge sums of money to get into that. Stocks, bonds, are these things not, too much for us? Looking at where we are and our situation, looking at how much we earn, can we still be able to do this? And does the age also matter in terms of going into some of these things?
Okay. Few comments very quickly. Elder has highlighted the principles. And if you are happy with where you are, then you can sit down and not think about moving. It's a matter of, are you happy with where you are? If you are not, then you got to do something about it. And let me assure you, it involves sacrifices. It involves sacrifices. You think your pay is not enough. I always tell people, I can assure you there are people who are worse than you are, and they are surviving. So if you keep saying my pay is not enough, you will remain as you are forever. It takes you deciding, I got to move from where I am, and to make the sacrifices required. There are 2 sides of a creation, and the Elder highlighted them. You need to increase your active income or reduce your expenditure so that you can have a surplus. Unless you are somebody who has been gifted with a large sum. If you are not, and you are like us, then those are the 2 options. Either you can increase your income, and a lot of times it's not that simple. Can you get an extra job or somehow increase what you are earning? A lot of us, it's not possible. The other option is to cut our expenditure. Indeed, I would dare say that too many of us are living beyond our means. Because Kofi is living this way, I want to live that way. Let Kofi live his way. I'm not Kofi. I tell people, I got to a point where I decided I want to be what they call an extreme saver. Extreme saver. That means you cut whatever you have to cut just to ensure you have some surplus to put into passive investment. So it's so important. And for most of us, that's the only way we are going to make anything more. Our economy is not like out there. Out there, it's easier to get a side job. Here, it may not be so. But even then, you can do something which others... For instance, let me share an example. When I traveled out there, I was studying, but you know what I was doing? These bottles that we have, you pay a deposit for taking any of them. But people use them and throw them away. You know what I did? At the end of the day, I'll go around the shops on campus and collect them. 5 cents for each of them. For every 10 I collect, that's 50 cents. For every 20, I have $1. You think it's small, but as you keep doing that, you are building income beyond what you would get normally. There are things which we think are small, but you need to start small. That's where I come to your question. You might not have a lot, but start small. If you're able to start small and put it into investment which yields passive income, as you see the return, that's what encourages you to do more. Because you start small, but you wonder, wow, I didn't know this can generate this much. So next time you are willing to sacrifice a bit more. And as you do that, you are able to generate more passive income. It's very, very important. It involves sacrifice. You can't start big. You must start small. But don't wait. Start as early as you can. And as you build on it, it becomes bigger and bigger. To the point where one of my goals was to get to the point where my passive income must be bigger than my active income. It's a very crucial threshold. And I was able to get to that. Unfortunately, our country has messed most of us up. But that's a goal you need to set. Whether you invest in Greek or whatever else, start small and you can get there. And I think it's very important.
All right. Thank you, Elder. Oh, okay.
So, you know, I like models because they are time-tested, especially the good ones, and they guide us as to how we can do things. I used to work in a bank, and you know how banks work. A bank will take your money, give it to somebody else. They will take your money and tell you, I'll give you 2% interest on it, or if you're lucky, 8%. And then they will give it to another person and charge the person 30% for the person to use the money. And then when you bring the money back, they take the person's money and give it to him. And then the spread or the difference between the interest they paid you and the interest they collected from the guy they gave the money to is the bank money. But why I like banks is this. Banks have been there a very long time. And they've perfected this model so well that banks are the most safe place to go and work. Because even though banks go under, they go under very extreme cases. And so how does the bank model work? Sometimes you need to, in quote, borrow. When you can borrow cheaply and use it for something that generates more than the cost of your borrowing, then you are in profit. It is an aspect of the presentation that I think I missed. I don't like loans. I don't like taking loans at all as a person. But sometimes you need to take a loan to put in a business that you are sure will do well. But there are various characters that we need to exhibit when we do that. I think integrity has been mentioned several times, and it's one of my favorite words. Integrity. When I take money from you and I need to pay you within 3 months or 6 months, I must make every effort that I do that. That way you build character. The next time you go to the person and say, oh, last time you gave me 500, today give me 1,000. The person will be happy to give you because he knows you have what? Character. You have integrity. That's what the banks do. If I borrow 500 cedis from the bank today and I pay it on time, and I go back to go and borrow 1,000, because I've shown integrity, they will give me the 1,000. And so debt is not bad. On our personal balance sheet, debt is not bad. But please be careful when you're going to borrow money. You should only borrow money when you know the cost of borrowing that money is less than the return you are going to get from using that money. Otherwise, you put yourself in even bigger trouble. And so banks are there to lend to us. Individuals are there to lend to us. Sometimes it's good to take some of these loans. However, be extremely careful about loans. In our part of the world, we don't have a lot of credits being offered. But out there, they actually push the credit down your throat. And they don't buy anything with their money. If you want to buy a phone, credit card. Buy a car, credit card. Buy a house, credit card. Everything is credit. Here we don't have it so. But where you have the opportunity, where you have a business that you think, we mean 50,000, by all means, do your calculations well. And if you need to go for debt, go for debt.
All right, thank you. We have been talking for long. So before Elder comes in, let me ask if there are comments or questions, areas where you may need clarification so far. But I hope you are following. Hello? Hello? Okay. Yes, Kofi.
My question is more on the real estate market in Ghana. Real estate in Ghana.
Real estate?
In Ghana. Is it really a viable venture? Right now, especially in Accra, houses real estate properties are going at a very crazy rate. You see houses that go for $1 million and you're like, what? And my question is, are you able to really generate $1 million over like 15 years? Is it possible to recoup that amount? And if so, does that make real estate a viable venture, especially in the times we find ourselves in Ghana? I don't know if my question was clear, please.
Yes, I'll die.
Maybe a quick comment. Question is, what's your perspective for investing? Term perspective, I mean. Is it short term? Is it long term? Clearly, real estate short term is not your cake. If you're looking long term, you might want to look at real estate, apart from the cost. Why am I saying so? Particularly in our situation now, the high-end real estate, we have a state of gluts. That is to say, people have put in monies and there are no takers. So you might have these flats for a long time, nobody will rent them out. But if your perspective is not short-term, you're at least maintaining the value of your money. Because the value is certainly going to go up. In the short term, you might be stuck. Your capital will be stuck. So the question is, where is your source of funding? If you can afford to keep it locked up for some time, maybe that's the way to go. But if you come to the lower end, that's where people are looking for places to rent. I mean, people are looking for 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, self-contained, whatever. So if you have that type, it will be hot cake. People will look for it. So depending on what real estate you want to get into, again, what kind of time perspective are you looking at? So that's also very, very important. That's the general comment I'll make. Maybe let me add quickly to the debt bit. The debt bit, some of us don't take advantage of opportunities for debt. One of the things I found is that sometimes in our offices there's opportunity to borrow virtually interest-free. That's free money for you. Note that you will pay back though. So for me, the way I look at it is, even as I pay back, that's a control on my expenditure. So enforced saving, but I've got some capital up front to invest in something. So like Elder said, always watch what's the cost of your capital and what you are going to invest in. It is critical. If there is no differential, don't waste time doing that. If it's risky, be very careful. Your integrity is at stake.
So Elder, I'd like to add to what you just said. Sometimes it's not about having it and then you are waiting for rentals. Somebody to rent it for 6 months, for 1 year. You go to Airbnb, there are people who come for short stays, like a week, 3 days, 4 days. You could actually start with that if you have a building. And then what will happen is somebody also comes from somewhere and says, okay, I don't want to stay for a week or two, I want to stay for 2 years. And then that's where, like Elder said, it begins. So you don't have to wait until I'm waiting for somebody to come to rent it for 2 years. In Ghana, we like that. When you go to somebody's house, he says, I need 4 years. When you even struggle to pay the 4 years, after 1 year, he comes and says, can you give me 2 cedis? And if you are not able to get it, it becomes an issue. So there's a way we can go about it. But in all this, the scripture, the Holy Spirit will have to guide us. I have always maintained that if the Lord is leading us, we will become the Jobs the Abrahams that he made out of this same earth.
All right. So, Kofi, I mean, the elder said that your financial objective is very important. If you are young, I remember, I mean, it's not so long, about 5 years ago, you may not even target a land in Accra because you cannot afford. After Adenta, Oyibi, those areas, few years ago, a land was about 10,000 cedis. Now you go over 200,000, just within a short time. So you could, I mean, be very smart, and sometimes you can even take opportunity. There are people who may be hard-pressed for money, and they are selling their properties. And it's out of the savings that you have made. And as Elder said, if you don't do that, I mean, in bits, you will not be able to do that. But through your savings, then you can channel the money into some of these areas. So you just have to be very smart, and also don't look at the big things, the lands in Accra and all that. There are other places that we can look at and invest. Within some few years, Other Santi Mensa will tell you where Other is now, how much he bought the land at that time, and how much the land is selling now. Okay, so you could also look at that. Yes, so now take, if there are no other comments, yes.
Yeah, Elder, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of our young folks here, like Elder Setenin said from the beginning. But I wrote something, and I want to say to the glory of God. I said yesterday that great things always have small beginnings. Not because Elder is here. I don't think Elder can remember what I'm about to say, but if God should play back when we were in the Noah's Ark, then I think God will remember Elder E. We were standing at the entrance there. Then we were young guys coming, and Elder impressed upon me, look, I'm somebody who really don't like to open an account. Me, I want to keep my money, even if it has to be under my bed. So Elder said, look, try and open an account. Because the moment you have a bank account, sometimes even to go and withdraw, it becomes a burden because you want the money to be there. You want to be adding up rather than. And this is a confession. It took me 2 years to do that. I was still, I prefer to see the money. When I get home and I want to buy shoe, I want to go under the bed and get the money. Why should I go to bank first? Then one day I just woke up. I said, you know what? Let me just go. So my first ever bank account was in ADB. And a small money like 5 cedis. Within a year, I had about 1,000 cedis. That time when they say you have 5,000, 10,000, it was no joke. So the saving ability started. And then I got a job in Tema. And then I met somebody like me, my boss's wife. She also doesn't like bank. So, what happened? One day, this woman wanted us to go and pay duty. When we got to the house, and I think President Kufuor redenominated in 2004, right? Yeah, thereabout. In 2003, too, when we were going to pay the duty, I virtually had to carry the money in a sack to the port. Then we were counting everything. So when we came back, she's from Volta North, Basari, but she speaks Ga very well. She's been here for over 20 years. So I said humbly, Madam, people have perceptions about what the banking system is. So I persuaded her. I said, they were then at Nongwa Adegon. And it was a new place, when they were now developing. And I said, look, and you can't go to somebody and request for that money. But if you give it to the bank and you wake up in the morning and the bank is bent up, they owe you, they'll pay you. Then I don't know, but I believe it was the Holy Spirit. Hey, Bra El, no, you are no quality. Woba. So the next day I went, look, we counted more than 6 sacks. She had all this money. And she has also tried to buy safe. They had money. So she has this De La Rue safe at the house. She was keeping all her money there. You know, when we went to open, so I took her to UBA, this Nigerian bank. After saving, then I said, oh, madam, no me and Tomoboy, small bank, you cry. But by the grace of God, I started saving. Let me tell you, within a matter of 2-3 years, this woman bought this container carrying 40-footer, the heads. She bought about 15. She bought almost 6 with her money, and because she was saving with UBA, they saw how she was saving, and then they opened a credit facility for her. If we allow God to guide us, you might see yourself as nobody, but you will be somebody. Because God has designed all of us to be rich, but we must just allow ourselves. Sometimes we feel that, you know, how can I start? How can I start? There must always be a starting point. I have never seen an ending point without a starting point. So there must always be a starting point. And it can be with Chaliwate. And you will end up being a Mercedes-Benz seller. Trust me. It's possible.
Amen. Yes, Elder Santimen, sir.
Thank you very much. I think agric is a very wide area. And you can make investments, but you have to invest carefully and with a lot of, maybe if you are not an agric person yourself, you have to seek advice. Also, it depends on what you want from it. Some people are interested in long term, like tree crops. You have cocoa or oil palm, coconut, rubber, mango, cashew. These are all there as long term. If you invest in it, you don't get your money immediately. You have to invest in it for some period, maybe 5 years at least, before you start to see the trees fruiting. And even when it starts to fruit, it will take you about another 5 years before you get to what we call economic yields. So it starts small, climbs up, and then it gets to the top, where now you can expect to get consistently good yields for a long time. Okay. If you are someone who wants your money very quick, then we have horticulture. Vegetables, especially, bring in a lot of income. But if you want to get more income from vegetables, then you have to grow it to meet the time when prices are high. We know that some times of the year, tomatoes get so cheap on the market, or maybe okra or garden eggs, they get too cheap because the rains are falling, all farmers are growing. But those who make the big money are those who will invest in irrigation, maybe sink a borehole or get some land by the banks of a river and get a water pump. And like if you want to make your money, let me just give one example. Pepper from about December all the way to May, prices are high. Tomatoes also from the same period, because God has closed the showers from heaven. So the land is dry. The land is dry so that the maize farmers can dry their maize. Okay, so if you want to grow, if you want to make money, then you have to plan in such a way that you have water. And God has stored a lot of water in the ground, but you have to go for it. So maybe you get a well, or you get a low land, a swamp land, which will dry up in the dry period. So you get that land. If you dig a little, you get water. And you nurse your seeds so that when you transplant, the plants will fruit and you begin to harvest when the dry season has started. And the market women have to go far to Burkina to get tomatoes, yours will be ready here. Currently, tomatoes, I think the paint gallon size is about maybe 100 or 150 cedis or something. Very expensive. And it's been sold from December last year. Even more. Yeah, okay. So if you are a young person and you want to make quick money, remember also that with the vegetable crops, you have to be there all the time. So you have to be close to that place. If it is a tree crop, you can plant it and go on holiday, come back again and weed and maintain the crop. And it's going to take some maybe years before it comes to fruiting. So tree crops are more for people who don't have time. You have your main work in Accra, you can have a tree crop farm somewhere away. And then periodically, maybe once a month or twice or something, you go there. If you have a local person there, assign him with tasks of weeding and doing this and doing that. That will take time. But with the trees also, once you've planted it, the trees will often outlive the owner. You will die and the farm will still be there. Okay. But if you want the quick money, then you have to make sure that you are a full-time farmer and you are not a part-time farmer. And so that it calls for planning, it calls for advice. In Accra, there was an optician, not those who make the glasses for people after Dr. Wiafi has done his job. You know, those who make the glasses. He was working in Accra, and he thought, and he's actually from Volta region, but he grew up at Mipom. Mipom is near Asamankese on that road. And they had a little farm there with a few coconut trees. And he realized that, the coconuts they harvest, the income that comes from it was substantial. And you know now, in Accra, one coconut is about how much now? 6 cedis. Okay. One coconut, 6 cedis now. It used to be 2 cedis some time back. And then 3, then 4, then 5, 6. Maybe in 1 or 2 years, coconut one will be 10 cedis. Okay. So this man who was working at, I think, Kolebu as a optician, let's say, he started planting more coconut trees over there. A time came, he looked at how much he was making from his official work compared to the coconut trees. And the coconut trees, he had even inherited some from his father, and he had planted a few more. Finally, he decided that it is not good enough for me to spend my time at Kolebu. He resigned. He went to Mipom and even got more land. Now he's a full-time coconut plantation owner. He's making a lot of money out of it. He's even got, he's made a YouTube video, which you can go on it and watch. He can tell you all that. Now he also has put in a coconut oil processing plant. He makes coconut oil, which comes to Accra in branded gallons and liters. He has also added, we call it agro-tourism, where people can come to that place. You have a tour in the coconut plantation, go through the farms, maybe for you to get an inspiration. And he's making money out of that tourism aspect also. Yeah. This is a man who had gone to school to study physics and going to optician. Now that is what he's doing. He also has set up a nursery. So people go and buy the coconut seedlings to go and plant. Now, one is costing 18 Ghana cedis. And if you want to plant 1 acre, you need about 80. So multiply that by that. So the coconuts that get fresh, the fresh coconuts, he sells them. It comes to Accra and other places. Then those that he will allow to dry, he will harvest them. Some will go to the nursery and come and become seedlings for sale. Others he will process into coconut oil. So this is just an example. When I was at Bunso, I had about 4 acres of land around my bungalow. And we decided that because Diana is from Asokore, Nkofodia, will put up a house there. But the money should not come from my, let's say, active income. So what we used to do was that we planted 2 crops of maize a year. Major season, March. Bunso has good rainfall, as you know well. So March, we'll plant the maize, 4 acres. We may harvest about 80 bags, which she was working at Tafu Hospital. So she go to the Tafu market, arrange with the condo people. And there was one woman, we could give it to her on credit. So she takes, let's say, 1 or 2 bags. She turns it into condo, and then she'll go and get the money. And we use that money to make blocks. Buy the sand at the bungalow, buy cement, get a mason to make the blocks. And then when we had enough blocks, about 5,000 blocks, we got one of our trucks to carry it all to the site at Kofodia. And so that house there is a Billy house. From the backyard, we planted maize twice a year for about 4 or 5 years. Every time we were planting, making the maize. So I was just producing and she was marketing. So that is just a small example. So for the young men, if you even have 1 acre of land, 1 acre. 1 acre is just 4 building plots. And it's close to, let's say, especially if you have a water source somewhere, you can plant a lot of vegetables and make a lot of money out of it. Last year, we planted 28 tomato plants in my garden. And out of the 28 plants, we harvested enough tomatoes which could keep us for at least 9 months of the year. You freeze it. Yes, my house. Yes, my house. You know, the next plot is a farm now. Okay. So there are many ways of making a side income or even going in for a full income. That's a future income if you want to go into cocoa farming. And you need to get advice because there are certain crops that have fewer pests and diseases attack, like coconut, like oil palm, like cashew. There are also other crops that also bring in good returns, but they require a lot of pesticides, like cocoa, like mango. So if you don't have enough time and you also want to spend less, depending also on the geographical area, you can seek advice and you get the right advice to know what kind of crop to go into. If you don't have time, you can be a coconut farmer, plant the trees. In 4 or 5 years, you start harvesting and maybe move out of Accra and go and be a coconut farmer, whatever. So there are many things. Of course, some people also want to get into animal production. Poultry is good, but the risk is also very high. High risk business. Good returns, but high risk. And as for eggs, people will forever eat eggs. Even vegetarians eat eggs. Some. Okay. And with egg production, the competition, there are very few or a minimum quantity of eggs will come from outside. But if you go for broilers, meat, you can't compete with poultry meat that is coming from Holland or America or Brazil or South Africa. You can't compete. And so broiler business is more problematic. The egg business is much, much better. So in all cases, just seek advice, a lot of which you get free advice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Elder. You realize that we have quite a number of consultants here that we can use free of charge. I know Dr. Mensah's story very well because he's a close friend. We sat in the same classroom. He's also from, I'm also from Asamankesi. So you realize that now what Elder is telling us, he is consulting and he's taking money. But we have the opportunity of having Elder and some of the other knowledgeable people here that we can take advantage of. So let's take advantage of them, and we'll also be financially free. Yes, Elder, before we come to...
Yes, Ed, I was going to say that it is not too late to go into any one of these. I mean, as for this church, we are planning that we should have somebody come and demonstrate to us how we can do mushrooms. I don't know, Ed, I don't know how well the mushroom market is in Ghana. But I'm thinking that a retiree who has a lot of time on his or her hand and some small space at home can decide to produce mushrooms, which is a very good substitute for meat. You go to some of these, I don't want to call them chop bars, otherwise people might think I'm eating from a chop bar. But you go to some of these local restaurants, and if they give you a small ball of mushroom, they could easily charge you 50 cedis of whatever for it. So there are several things that we can do. We don't just have to sit down and say, oh, I'm past my prime, and so there's nothing that I can do. In our backyards, we can do a lot of things. I mentioned the example of Mrs. Brown. In her house, every container has to get something planted in it, from bathtub to Kufuor gallons to any container. Once it can take sand, something must be planted in it. And I think that for those of us who, even if you're living in a rented space, maybe your porch or somewhere outside on the walls, wherever, you can get some small space to start something. And we don't have to wait. We don't have to wait. Procrastination has never been a friend to man. And so, yes, times are hard, but we can do something small, either to save the money that we would have used to buy, or produce something that we can now sell to somebody else to get some money from. If I was a host, I had a question for Star Roberta, but I'm not going to usurp the host position. I was going to ask her about her tie and dye business some time ago. I used to be a very strong patron of her tie and dye. Is it still in vogue? Can some of our women try out some of these things? I know the women's ministry took up soap making. When the COVID came, we were buying soap. And I was wondering, why does the church have to go outside and buy soap when our women can do soap and sell to the church? Somebody will say that, yet it's council accommodating. It is true. We go through a lot of challenges simply because some of the small basic things that we can do for ourselves, we want to get money to go and buy them. So women's ministries, if you teach even some of us, the men, how to do the soap, maybe we can do it and take it out of the chop money so that we can save some money from there. The men will probably learn how to do the mushroom and some other things, again, so that we can augment the incomes or reduce the costs that we incur. But my point is that we don't have to wait. My now say, oh, me de me ni bibi aye, me nti me nya hwe. Obetimi aye bibi. Nti ye bibi na fa bo a ho and help others. This is a time when the church needs each one of us to hold each other's hand as we go. Because the burden on some of the people that we always go to for support is so high that so let us help one another. Let us do very basic things in the house, reduce the cost, And the additional, I like Elder Santimen's story. You know, when you save money, the best thing to do is to use that money immediately for something. It is there that you see the actual value of the money that you've saved. But when you save money and you don't have a target as to what I'm going to do with the money, you will never see the value. The young people, the unmarried ones, Nelson, I see you, I saw Katie around. The pizza has become too much. Now a box of pizza is going for 300 cedis or more. And that can do so much. You use 300 cedis to do a small tomato farm in your backyard, and you see the value of it. But when you take the pizza and you consume it, you will not see the value. You know, so the small monies that we can get, if we can use that for something immediately that is productive, then really we can see the value of some of these things. And I wish the children could be brought in at this hour. I don't know what they are doing outside.
Yeah, so maybe if they are done with their,
yes,
they can come in, because we're almost wrapping up. We spent quite some time talking about how to create wealth. So I'll come to Order Nate and finally to Order Ayi to talk about the spiritual side. And there's one part of Order's presentation that I think maybe two that we can briefly discuss about our health and also trying to train our successors. Maybe a bit of that, because in your presentation, if we go through all this, we apply our energies, and in the end, we don't look after our health, how do we manage this? And you also spoke about our successors. You spend your energies. I mean, you abstain from so many things, and now you get a successor who is not able to also sustain the world that we're able to generate. So a quick point on that, then I'll come to Elder Ayi.
Okay, so let me start with that of our health. We lack so much when it comes to keeping our health, because sometimes you sit down in long meetings, you travel, all because you want to make the money, because it's good to make the money. Eat late, you know, which is a habit I'm still trying to fight, because sometimes you get home so late and you are hungry and you need to eat. And then my wife will say, just take tea. I said, look, I'm hungry. I don't need tea. But I believe that we need to work on it, because, you see, when you try it once, I remember a whole weekend too, I said, I was going to, like Elder said, it's all about the discipline. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm not going to eat at night. So when I come and I'm even hungry, I only will do a tea, usually with small brown bread. And I was so light. You know, my brains were working. I could see that, like, I could feel like the blood moving. You know, you say something, I can quickly talk about it and give answers. Then, like my brother Willie, who started vegetarianism, and he had to, you know, yield along the way. Then again, I started eating late at night. And sometimes, you see, we brag. Oh, when I eat, I will stay for like 2 hours before sleeping. I will read. Honestly, I don't survive the next 20 minutes. By the time I realize I'm gone, and it will be 4. You wake up again, you keep on running. So we'll make all the money, and at the end of the day, you'll be visiting the hospital. You know, I have seen men and women in the hospital sleeping there, and it's a terrible thing. Some have not taken their showers for close to a month because there's a relative who has money but is at the ICU, or sometimes is being taken care of, and it's problematic. Like Elder rightly said, look, if money could buy these things, these people wouldn't be at the hospital. They would have bought their health long time. And so we need to do something. We must eat well, exercise, but not at the detriment of, you know, serving God. Because I remember the last time I decided, okay, I was going to be going for a walk 5 o'clock, every day 5 o'clock. And even sometimes midweek when I know there's supposed to be a midweek prayer meeting. Okay, you let me still go for the work. By the time I'll come, I'm tired and I had to, abolish coming to church. So we must take good care of our health, because what is money when you are not healthy? And then the successor issue. I want to look at this practically, because you may not always have children that can take after you. It is not 100% possibility, because children also have minds of their own. As soon as they grow, you can't force them like, I'll be able to tell Catherine and Empress sit down and they'll sit down. When they are 18, I can't say sit down again, because he will probably give a reason why he or she can't sit down. And what can I do about that? So we do these things with the prayer that God will make them, the Holy Spirit and God himself will be training them as we do our God-given abilities. But then the lesson was quite good, because we were admonished that if peradventure you are able to tell that your successor cannot inherit you, praise be to God, there's always a way. You can choose to what? To let other people run the business so that it can be taken care of them. And there are countless examples that can be given. You know the Ford family, the car Ford. Today, it is not actually the family members who are running it. There are people who are running it. Even like the estate of Ellen G. White, there are other people that God has endowed them with wisdom, and they can help to maintain your legacy for generations to come. Your children will only go for paid from there. Your grandchildren can go to be paid, but the business must go on, just so that your legacy is sustained. But in all this, except the Lord build a house, the laborers will labor in vain.
All right, thank you. Let me come to Elder Aye. Elder spoke today about how we can remain holy as we try to gain the wealth and become rich. Elder, how do we keep the balance? Because we want to be wealthy. How do we attain the wealth and also remain holy?
I guess, like the writer did say, indeed, quoting Deuteronomy chapter 18, the key thing is to understand that the source is God. It is so, so important. When we forget that it is God who gives us the ability to get anything or to become anything. So it's not just what we have, but what we are. If we get to understand that it is God who is the source of all this, it becomes much easier than to try to find out how can I live to please him. When I get employed, I must work to please my boss. So that's sort of the context. When I understand that all I am and all I have are from him, then it becomes easier to always be seeking how would he want me to run his affairs, his business. But we lose track of that. Like the reading did say, often when we accumulate these things, we think we depend on them. And we become a slave to them more than anything. And it becomes a problem. So it's so important to keep reminding ourselves of the fact that God is the source. So once he's the source, he will direct the way we ought to go. And as I keep saying, lately I pray only one prayer. The only one prayer that I pray is that God will open my eyes to see the way he wants me to go. But seeing is not enough, but to walk the way. So that's the key prayer I pray most of the time. The rest, they are just sidelines. The key prayer is, you get to a point where you find the complexity of things are such that if you rely on yourself, or anybody else or anything else, you will go astray. So the thing is to understand that he is the base, solid base. As I say, either you can look at him as the compass or the anchor. Out in the rough sea, once you have the compass, we are used to GPSs now. We are forgetting about compasses. So it's sort of like the GPS. I don't need to know where I'm going. The important thing is to get the GPS to know where I need to end. It will direct me there without knowing whether I should turn left or right. It will tell me turn right, turn left, turn right, and the next thing it tells you, you are in front of the destination. That's what God is to us, really. And if we get to do that, it will help us. It's not very easy, but you need to get to a point where, like the wise man said, vanity of vanity, all is vanity. Really, that's the truth. As a young person, often we lose track of that. We think, oh, we can make it on our own. But with time, like Ecclesiastes says, remember when you are young that some days are going to come, which are called the evil days, and they surely come. Before you get there, if it's possible to align with God, you are blessed. And the way I want to put it.
All right. Thank you so much. I'll now come to the audience. Is there any question or something you want to add on? Any question or a contribution? Yes, Bramosis.
Asante Mensa. CCR no, young cocoa crafts no. CCR galam said the year I say cocoa yina. Ma cocoa into me so say cano. Until so be war cocoa food sa. Abe any kubeno. A mood ya when I say or Sunday ya. A bet me am and his car sing neonko.
Opening, say, Coco no say, and no one when you jihua. Ubetimi etra egu. Now I say, dear fofro. And no ye training in a moo precompe. Ubecha phone mube miensa. A few way no etra 1/3 no. Ucha na we dear body. Now the cocoa no afamu. Second year no, na we etra. Second portion no na wasan adua ne saa third year no na wasan atwa ehɔ no third one no na wasan adua body no ne cocoa no saa by the fourth year no na first one no aye na start na so ɛna sɛ asase no sɛ ewu a asase na ho ɔden asa ɛnɛ no yɛ wakwan ahorow bebree sɛ baabi a afuo no wɔ no poultry farm wɔ hɔ a Womu yi sawdust no fi poultry dan mu egu a wo de koso ni nyina na fa kogu ukoko na ase koko no be mono ebesan aso bebre se wo betimi ato fertilizer so de a na wato fertilizer na de egu ase ba se wo anya hwe kura wo de fa poultry manure no egu ase koko no be so fine se o mpe koko no bi ho a na se wo pe abe ana kube a mienu no e wo se wo de etoto ho hwe se emu de wo hene bi a ehun ni how bebre o hwe a kube de udua ene no ye wo dwarf coconut cocoa kube a edi mfie be miensa enan na ahyase na eso eno esu bebre ye wona horo bebre eno ubetimi ate no saa kofim se eno enye tintintem enti ubetimi ate a neti no enye ohaw bebre udua tetedie no a local no ana se hybrid no a eno ebeche kakra and also a yet tintin and temchen dwarf one. Inti ube decided near ope. Now, what's the Kubeno atutu abeho. Kube de udia a huge money a kitty ne France and I say Nivirano, dada no apina a tofom. Inti se wa hiase obi befro na wako twitwa eno. Abedie e was say we ye hu pruning all the time. Eno abenye self pruning. Abeno you have to go and do the pruning. Se one ye pruning ni yeso a abeno intimi nso papa. O ya abeso a edu time bia na se abena ye tintintin a e wo se ohwehwe se baby a wa ye fu no ye won krofo bi ho a omo ye very good om de omo nsuro duafro ye wo tribes bi ho a omo de eno ye omo adwuma pa. They are not afraid to climb the tall palm trees. Say some microphone be new area how they are. Any not just say what to pet it to. A benefit me a gina hosa, who know be a mano enconumreo. So you have to think of these two, balance, look at your local area and decide on what is best for you.
Yeah, that's it, Elder. All right, any other? Okay. Yes, Antipat.
Nkone kasemu keje Elder Asante Mensa ngo bi Antone ni ntasi. Makpa fa keshi ke wo fen wo ye heku ni heni wo yo wo chuse wo na keshi e banye wa wo boy modern wo bi nga wo loy na me wa wo ke ha noku papa dumo mokoba ni e ba kemi mene akwadu enako enu akwadu dan na akwadu neke banka o me ni we ba elo eje e ba wo ntu ese muji e ka Antipat ye fun na tena wona we e wo e ba du akwadu na edu akwadu e ka ne me na ke hale nkruma bi yo ne e ka je cantonment e wo na teje ni e afu ekoni ekebani ekebamini edu anokwale edu eko enyo eten edwe enumo eni akwa ewo nene kemba egbla nika machine boni akwadu edale yo ne ekwa amagrik bi ameli akwadu edale ne nene be julo e ba ju amwa ni lenwe eje ni wo meni etu ko nu wo fe ni ne julo e ba nwa me ba ju ewo gbeka ko na ne buen blomo ewo wo chigbe ni ka po ma chele ko ne ba kwanu ku say it escaped me beni wo fro akwadu e ne ka no si etu a green etu ewo ni na ameka mba from ninka oni e shako fo amu akoma ka etu na afo eko ni wole ewo mi wie na to the glory of God ake come meeting shika heni na kejene nda shika kejeje bi Antone ekuse wo eko ewo kanoko fio eje ni ba wa wo eba wa wo hia fo ine akeshi ko kesebe wo je ni wo ba jo no eba yin ene ni bi fio oba na akeshi keke onani bebi e ha wo shika kecho be sroto ewo money je wane ke bankele ba ya ntu ese ni kwe noni yo jeme iye ngmele hu ye jeme iye popo le hu ye jeme si popo eke noni yo mi ji nyonte ni meba flo nene mele hu na kanu si mbe kefie nhu iho iha ni ke ko school bi ko me hu ka mete school we ame mami me ha me ska fe no ko no nketu e wo mi pa fa ke si mi no ni mi experience iho textiles a hu me ni le ameli ni bi no mo dro mi e wo e ha ihe akomoko no ko no akesi ihe ba akomoko no ko no lo no ko e wo mi pa fa ko ye sipon fio yo tu se che mokoni ba ebe ye agric tomboni wo elder ebe ye mine oba na ke ka ke dushi no oba o he jano ni miele afuo na meke adani e wo le na no ko ye bi e wo ma pa fa ke si wo menu wo ke wo akam meeting nya wo ji anshi nu wo ke ni amamoshi e ba wa wo nya ba moko ba be ba yo that e wo ke dan wo ke o wo nya no ko fe no ko nya fe be bi enmo e ja ko te me ko me nyumo dromo ne ke ha wo ni nya e masusu ko nko ne ke e wo mi pa fai be ke ko chole ni yeli ke ni ji enini e ko ka wale mu ha le nu osisi wo fi oni yo titiro blahin na fi o ne ngba me yo o blahin ye hun ngba me yo ame he wonu wota bi ngba me yo they are not here to even listen and learn. There are so many, we have a lot of talents in our midst, but we don't use them. We don't use them. Hekometo woko, yes, and woko ekome. Mo fe mo eya, bote mo pia mi no kwe. No bana ke ko feku. Se fe di wo makpa fai, obla hie, nye ka nye nyande me obla. Baby e wo mani wo dra ke wo wie. Ameke wo wi ojo. Ko ko na ipo awo bogbe. E wo makpa fai. Makpa fai wa no ko ni inna ni be baba mawie madam obi e mawie e wo mi pa fai no tumo le eye si gbo mo no ba o ba plan ko ba tun e no mo ba job no ba no tu si ju ele ka ko o ya no aju e no mo ke ko gba ko aju abonsan to ogu ni o to aju na mobo si ko ke no mo nye baby e o ba ke apobo society epo mo ko po ko bo mi amo hie ke no ko afon hie o ba na no ni no mo ba fe ni ke ho e wo ke ni na eldajima ye bi ene mi wie wa nenu wo ko talise ni wo hie ene je no wo wi o ye sinke wo mi wo ko talise ni wo hie ni wo kase eche me ko me hu ye ni ehe homo ye ame ne saka meli e wo ka me na ni wo hie pe keke abi wo o kan wo mba hi o ye di e ko ko kete e ko te no bi la kesi mi no na ye mi e ka nye so mo nye bo mo de nye bo mo de nye chosi omo e ke wo chosi omo ke wolu ni fe mo e wo nyo ma na wo fe mo bo titiri wo bi ni ba se ne wo ha je ye hu amena wo fi ono fe no wo ha ame e wo amele no ni ba ye hie no ne ba wo ye se nimpa fai ene no ni wie na be mi ene mi kura yi si mu mo wi o ake nokomba etetri homo yewo onye sika onye ne obenu ko no ba na no ba ye sibi antone obesika fio yesika fio ni bi jilewa onye ohi ewo onye awoda ni mo si ake ewawo adventist ewawo wa ewawo ni tasi ye fe yami mi panye fai mo fe wo bowo e modern Christos mo ni wo seje eblesi na ha.
Okay.
I'm done.
Thank you, Auntie Pat. Other sentiments I have been sorted out here with the interpretation because part of it was, I think, for you. But we'll consult here later. All right, thank you. So I'll take a final round of comments, then we'll sing our closing hymn and bring our program to an end. I'll start with the question.
All right. So I think I would end by saying that we all know that things are not going to get easy. Today, when we were having a business meeting and we were discussing how we are going to pay for camp meeting, you can tell that people are going through a difficult time. The bad news is that it's not going to change. The conditions are not going to change. The fundamentals are not strong enough to merit a certain change in our system. And so things are going to get more expensive, and we are not regulated. So everybody passes on the prices as and how they please. And so things are not going to get any cheaper. But as we have said, if you sit down and you don't do anything about it, then you would pay the price for it. Whatever you need to do to give you much more income, then please, by all means, let us do it. Things are not going to get easy. Let us look for ways by which we can add to our income or reduce our cost. And when we do that, we would have a little bit more to be able to take care of the things that we need. And I would like to borrow what Adai mentioned, that let us not live our lives comparing it to other people. Let us live within our means and do things as we can afford, not because somebody else is doing it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Odanati.
Well, I would make an appeal that we share the Trust Services Week material with the church so that they can read further on areas we are still unable to touch, so that at least we always abreast ourselves with how we ought to live. And also, finally, I still maintain that with all this, the Lord must be allowed to lead, because when he leads, we shall find our way home.
Amen. Thank you. Yes, Elder.
Thank you very much. What I want to say is that not all the fingers are the same, I keep saying. So we shouldn't say it is they who can, we can't. Actually, it's about all of us. All of us can do something about these principles. Wherever you find yourself, you can improve your lot. It takes effort, it takes some sacrifice. And it's even worse now than before. Earlier, it was much easier. I don't see much light. There's a lot of difficulties out here. You think you are not making ends meet, but there are people who can barely survive. And somehow I tend to feel that older people are suffering more than the younger people. The younger people, you can get around to make things happen. But the older people, they know, they anticipated that things are going to be tough. So they have sort of prepared for it. and they are stuck. Let me give you an interesting example. There was an institution I had invested with, and for every day you go to them, if you have money with them, you can withdraw 4,000 cedis. That's a lot of money to take in a day. I went there a couple of months ago. I asked them, how much can you take a day? They said, in a week you can take 1,000. From 4,000 a day, they said, that's what they said. Now I asked for some money. That is from April, first week of April. I'm still waiting for the money. That's how difficult the setting is. So don't think you are the only one suffering. Yes, we are in it together. But we can all do something about it. The little you can do it to improve yourself, following the principles we have learned. And with God's blessings, He will certainly see us through. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me also thank all of you for joining us throughout the week, and also for our presenters, starting from Pastor. Pastor started with us on Sunday, then Odaboche, then we got someone speak to us on a Tuesday, then Wednesday Oda Seth Enin, then Oda Nate, and Oda Ai today. Thank you so much. And also spending time this afternoon staying behind to learn more of the principles. For us as church leadership, we'll try our best to have such programs. We just pray and hope that members will take advantage and opportunity of such programs so that all of us can benefit from the lessons that we learn. Amen. We'll rise and sing hymn number 430 as our closing hymn. Hymn 430.